Yo, what's going on, guys? Welcome back, Bullony Basketball. I believe this is episode 17 now with Johnny. How's it going, Johnny?
What's going on, Garrett? Opening day baseball. Got the Cubs hat on. Final Four tomorrow, so big day in the sports or big week in the sports world. And then the NBA is just perusing along. Drummond to the Lakers, huge news, breaking news, that and much more. So ready to dive into it.
Yeah, like you said, I feel like this is always the week where there's like the most activity in the sports world. Like you said, baseball's starting up. So they have a ton of basketball stuff. NFL, there's a bunch of headlines there because like the draft. But I mean, we're gonna start off with what you said with Andre Drummond and really the whole buyout market. We had Drummond to the Lakers. We had LaMarcus Aldridge going to the Nets. I mean, we kind of already discussed Blake Griffin going to the Nets a little bit ago, and then also to throw in just Gorgie Jang went to the Spurs. What did you think of these moves?
Yeah, is it crazy for me to think that Gorgie Jang might be like the most, not the best player out of those three, but like the player that could actually help these teams the most? Like,
Yeah.
I think Drummond's going to provide stuff to the Lakers that Aldridge won't provide to the Nets. Like, Drummond will get playing time. Drummond will probably start. Drummond will look better than how he's looked in Cleveland or Detroit because he's going to be playing with LeBron and AD. Not a notable first game for him, which would have been last night, so Wednesday night. Got injured, but like I think for me the biggest thing with Drummond is like he can only play the five. You're probably going to see Harrell play the five a lot. You're going to see Marcus All play the five. Anthony Davis might be best suited playing the five. So like for me, it's going to be how they shake out those minutes. Then you get to like LaMarcus Aldridge, and I don't think he's going to provide a whole lot for the Nets. I think he says, oh, yeah, I can switch on to smaller guys. I can provide all this for this team. They might, like, fizzle away from DeAndre Jordan, so I don't know what they plan on doing there. But, like, you could see Drummond, or you could see Aldridge getting maybe 12 to 14 minutes a game. And then Gorgie Jang, I think, is a solid player. I think he's a great backup five for Jakob Poeltl. Might get the most minutes out of these three players. Good defender. A lot older than one would think. I think he's like 31 or something, which is crazy. But I think he's a real solid pickup. So if I had to rate those three, I think Gorgie Jang would be my best pickup.
Yeah, I mean, what I will say with Drummond, I mean, you touched on like how they have all these guys that pretty much are best suited at the five, and I think last year that's like what you'll go back to see with like Dwight Howard, and he was pretty much the main guy in the playoffs that could play the five. I mean, they had JaVale, but it seemed like as the season went on, like his role began like to become less and less. And you had guys like Dwight, and then you had AD who could also play the five and was better there. And it was a pretty short rotation. Now it's like you're throwing in guys like Drummond and Gasol and Montrezl Harrell and Anthony Davis when he comes back, and it's just going to be like a little bit weird. But the thing is with Drummond, like that's like he'll have nights where he just can't be stopped on the glass, but then he'll also have nights like that. I'm sure like us both being like D Rose fans, we saw him when he played with the Pistons, and he would get a lot of turnovers for a big man. He would have the ball in his hands a lot of the time, and that's something that could be concerning for the Lakers, especially in fast break, which is something that they love to do. But at his best, I mean, they could be one of the like Stifle Tower teams like they were last year that just clean the glass. And he has defensive capabilities, just about putting the effort in all the time. LaMarcus Aldridge, I don't really know how to feel about that. It's like kind of a weird fit, I think, with the Nets. It's just like another guy. Just like I said with Blake Griffin, he could have like one of those breakout games in the playoffs. I think he's still good enough to potentially have that, but I doubt he's going to be doing it like on a nightly basis. And he'll probably be coming off the bench. And then, like you said with Gorgie Jang, I think that he'll get probably the most consistent role of all three of these players, and might be the most well-rounded of the three right now. So I kind of like that for the Spurs.
Yeah, I think the other thing is just because the Spurs are like lacking bodies at the five, so it's like Jang's like a throw-in to get the minutes. Whereas you get to Aldridge and Drummond, and it's very matchup specific, or it's very like game style specific to the point where you could see him play 25 minutes one night and then be a did not play coach's decision the following night. So like a lot of it's up in the air to see where these coaches think that these players are going to fit best.
Yeah, it'll be good to see like how they're all put into their respective rotations. But talking more about LaMarcus Aldridge and more specifically his new teammate James Harden, he said recently that he believes he is the MVP this season. We got tons of guys like Jokic, Damian Lillard, Giannis. Before injury, Embiid, LeBron, they were up there as well. What do you think of James Harden? Do you think that he's right or maybe not quite?
I mean, I don't want to say he's wrong, but I don't think he's like 100% right. Like to me, it's Jokic. Barring any injury, Jokic wins the MVP. But I have Harden and Dame rounding out the top three. So like he has a case. He's played phenomenal for the Nets. The Nets aren't losing when he's playing. Like the case is there to be made. But I think what Jokic has done since the beginning of the season, all one team, really done it all from the beginning, I think I give him the edge. And then I don't know how to shake out 2 and 3. 2 and 3 are Dame and Harden. I don't know in what order. But I feel confident at saying those are the 3 front runners and everybody else is at least a step behind them.
Yeah, I think both Dame and Harden will be like the first team All-NBA guards at the end of the season. But like you said, I think Jokic is probably the favorite. What Harden's done with the Nets, I believe since he's been there, they've had the best record in the league if you compare with everyone else throughout the full season. But you can't just – it's going to be something that you look back like when Giannis won his first one. I remember when Harden was the runner-up. And at the beginning of that season, I think they started like 11 and 14. Like people noticed that at the beginning of the season they were slow to start, whereas the Bucks and Giannis were great all year long. Like I feel like people are not going to forget the fact that Harden for the first like 10 to 15 games was in Houston and he wasn't playing to the best of his ability. He was out of shape and basically forced his way out of there. And then now he's come to the Brooklyn Nets and he's been playing a lot better since. But I mean, Jokic has been doing it all year long. Dame has been doing it all year long. You can maybe argue him over Giannis, I guess, because he's had his high moments. He's also had his low moments. So, I don't know. I would probably take both Jokic and Dame over him right now.
Yeah, and you have to remember the award is, like, narrative-based, too. Like, there is some... Obviously, the stats matter and the team record matters, but then there's also narratives because the people that are voting for these players are real people, and they have feelings, and they have biases, and so we have to take that into account when considering who we think is going to win versus who we think should win. So that's something that we should decipher from as well.
Yeah, and I mean, I completely agree, and I don't think he'll end up winning it, though, but he could be very close in the end. But we're going to move on to another troublesome situation. I feel like we've hit one every single week, and we've talked about this team before, but I mean, as we get closer to the end of the season, it becomes more and more of a worry, and that's the Boston Celtics. Last season, they were 48-24, and I mean, that's 72 games because of the shortened COVID season with the bubble. This year, they're going to play 72 games, so it'll be the same amount, but they've already lost one more game, and they have 25 less wins. We've already discussed, like, they lost Gordon Hayward and Brad Wanamaker, Enes Kanter, like, all these other players. They're 3-7 in their last 10. They've lost 2 straight. What's the problem with the Celtics?
Not talent, that's for sure. I mean, they have Tatum, they have Brown. Marcus Smart's a good role player. Kemba Walker is Kemba Walker still. So the players are there, the pieces are there. The puzzle just isn't being able to be put together. Maybe there's some piece missing. For weeks, I've been saying they'll figure it out, they'll figure it out, they'll figure it out. It just seems like every game they dig themselves into such a hole at the beginning of the game. Third and fourth quarter comes around, they make a big run, they're in it, and then they just take one big punch at the end of the game and they find themselves losing it. So it's almost like a lack of urgency. Like those spurts in the third and fourth quarter, they look like one of the better teams in the East, and it's like, why can't you just do this for 48 minutes? Now, obviously, there's more to it. I don't know if it's a locker room problem. I don't know if it's the rotations or what it is exactly, but it's one of those things like where you see both the highs and lows. You see how bad it can get, and that's your first quarter with the Celtics almost every game. Then you see that this is the ceiling the team has, that we can go on a 20-2 run and get ourselves back in the game in the matter of 5 minutes. kind of like those Warriors teams where Steph and Clay could just shoot themselves back into a game and literally 2 minutes they could be down like 12 points and a minute later they're down 3. It's like one of those things where the Celtics just go on these long runs, but it's like, why can't they do it from the beginning of the game? So I don't know what to pinpoint that reason to be, but I'd expect some big wholesale changes coming up in the summer. I'd be shocked if Kemba isn't moved on in the summer. So that's the big thing I'm looking for. And then, like, why did they trade Tice for nothing? Like, I know he's going to be a free agent. I know they want to give Robert Williams minutes, but, like, you got Luke Cornett in return. Like, there was no point in doing so. It's one thing if you're going to get somebody that you plan on retaining or something like that, but you got Luke Cornett. I highly doubt he factors into the long-term plans.
Yeah, that Tice trade was one of the more questionable ones, I think, at the deadline. I believe they also got Mo Wagner, but neither of those guys have been playing, like, that many minutes. They really haven't been much of a game changer. And Tice, he was a starter for the team that made the conference finals last year. And, like, not really having much big man depth. Yeah, they have Robert Williams. Of course, he's undersized. But other than that, like, they don't have much down there. Their defense looks pretty bad. And, like, if you heard Brad Stevens the other day, he said, like, when they just lost to the Mavericks, he was saying how, well, Luka Doncic, you know, he's hitting all these crazy shots. Like, what are you supposed to do about it? But it's not like he had all, I don't know how many points they had, but they had about 120. You know, like, if he went off for, like, a Will Chamberlain-esque game, then I guess, but that doesn't happen every night. And, you know, they're just not playing very good defense. They don't look enthused. And if you look at, like, where they're at right now, like, I think they're the 8th seed, and in the first play-in game, I think they'd be against Atlanta, who they've done pretty well against them this year. I think that's the game where I think Gallinari have his, like, almost 40-point game against them. I think that's...
Yeah, Gallo had that outburst, yeah.
And, I mean, I'm not saying he will necessarily, but I'm pretty sure they beat them another time this season too. So they have, like, the season series with them. Then it puts them in, like, the other playing game with probably the Pacers or Bulls at the loser, like, the in-between game for the 8th seed. And you don't want to come down to, like, a single-game situation because anything could happen. I would favor the Celtics, of course, but, like, you just don't want to – because I think on any given night, you know, pretty much anyone could beat any other team, especially, like, the Pacers, the Bulls. They aren't, like, terrible teams. So, like, anything could happen.
Yeah, and so the Celtics are down 2-1 in the season series so far. But their defense just hasn't been there. They've given up under 100 points just twice, 2 times all season, 3 times, it looks like. Just about 3 times all season they've given up under 100 points, and they've won one of those games. They've won 2 of those games. But, like, there's no defense being played. You're getting outscored heavily in the first 2 quarters. You're digging yourselves holes that are hard to come out of. So it's just like, it's just a big disaster. Like, there need to be some changes. Tatum and Brown are still young, but they're only going to be young for so long. Like, you can't keep saying, oh, we don't want to blow it up. Oh, we don't want to blow it up. Oh, we don't want to make that big move. We don't want to make that big move. Like, eventually you have to take your shot. And I get waiting for it, but at a certain point, it's just like a ticking time bomb that you have to eventually make that move. And so I think this summer we might see some surprising moves.
Yeah, and I know it's been just a few games, but Evan Fournier hasn't really played how they expected either. He had like an 0 for 10 game, I believe, in his debut. So I don't know. If he can get going, maybe they can start making a run, but it doesn't look too promising for them, for the season in terms of a championship aspiration, which is what I think they went in with that mindset of going into the season.
For sure.
But we're going to move on to another topic in the Eastern Conference with more teams struggling, and I have it titled like the race for the Eastern Conference 11th seed, because it seems like all these teams keep trying to lose, one with our Bulls, and then, of course, the Raptors, the Cavaliers, the Wizards, like all these teams like in the mix are on a losing streak right now, and it seems like none of them want to get that last spot for the play-in. What do you make of these teams struggling and not trying to get that last spot?
Yeah, I mean, Bulls brought new faces in. Now Levine has that ankle injury. Raptors, traded away Norm, but didn't make like a wholesale change. Gary Trent's played well. Siakam's been in that rut the whole time. The Raptors have been hit with that COVID health and safety protocols, and so like they're just funky out of rhythm. The Cavs have two wildly inefficient guards in Garland and Sexton. Went from having like all the bigs in the league to like no bigs and having to start Isaiah Hartenstein. Wizards have two very good players in Westbrook and Beal, but ever since that little 7-1 spurt, like where they won 7 of their 8 games, you've seen one of Beal or Westbrook sit out just about every game, and so there's been a lack of continuity and rhythm there. So it's anyone's game to go out and grab that, but I don't think it really matters because it's just an invitation to lose. Like, there's no hope for any of these teams. There's not a chance I see any of them making any sort of a run. So it's like a meaningless race for the 11th seed, if you want to call it that.
I guess, but I mean, it could also be something to look forward to down the line and build off of, especially for like these younger teams like the Cavs and the Bulls. I won't talk like much about the Cavs. You know, Sexton's been like in and out of the lineup a little bit recently, and you know they bought out Drummond over the past month. They really haven't been too great. You know, like the Wizards, they're a really streaky team. You know, like at the beginning of the year, they were the worst record in the league. Then they went on like a big winning streak, and everyone thought they were going to come in there, make the playoff push. Then after All-Star break, it seemed like they were on a downslide again. They won a few games. Now they're back on a losing streak. So I don't even know like what's going to happen with them. And then like the Raptors are probably the most surprising. I know they've had guys out, but they've still had more than enough to win. Like, I don't know how they've lost games that they really should have won. Like the one the other night against OKC. You know, no Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, no Al Horford, and they're just better than them. Like, it's as simple as that. So I don't know how they lose that game. And then as for the Bulls, like they lost so many games recently that they should have won. Like the 2 against the Spurs, they lost the 1 to the Cavs when Sexton didn't play. And now they're going to be playing, I believe their next 2 games are against the Jazz and the Nets, who are like the two 1 seeds right now in each conference. So it's like, how do you expect to win those games? So I don't know. It's just like not taking advantage of when something is, you know, put right in front of you.
If we're going to be honest, though, like outside of the Raptors, we didn't really have expectations for these 3 other teams. Like at best, we thought the Bulls would vie for that 7th or 8th seed. At best, that's kind of what you think of the Wizards. The Raptors, you thought would maybe be a 4, 5, 6 seed in the East. So like we thought they'd be a playoff team. The other teams, this is like certainly in their realm of possibilities. This is something that we thought maybe they get that 7 or 8 seed, but there's a good chance that they fall outside of the playoffs. And that's kind of what we're seeing happening right now. So it's the sort of consistency that I expected from most of these teams, minus the Raptors.
I would say that's true about the Cavs, but I don't know about the Wizards for the sake that I think a lot of people had them at least making the play-in because of having just Westbrook and Beal. And then in terms of the Bulls, maybe not at the beginning of the year, but now that you got Vucevic too, I mean, him and Levine, that's 2 all-stars, and I'm sure people still expect them to at least make the play-in. You know, like there's not many teams in the NBA that have 2 all-stars this season on their roster.
Yeah, you could say that, but like, I guess where I'm trying to go with it is that now with the expanded play-in, like you could call a playoff like you don't have to be in the top 8 to be in the playoffs if you want to say because of those play-in games. So like it's the bottom of those play-in games, I think, is still in the realm of possibilities or something that I'd feel more comfortable at the beginning of the season saying that I think the Bulls will make the play-in game than a 5 or a 6 seed. Whereas the Raptors, I think it's the reverse. I was more confident that the Raptors would be a 5 or a 6 seed as opposed to make the play-in game. And so I think that's kind of the distinction I'm trying to make.
Yeah, and I just think that the main thing is that like all them losing, like it seems like they don't even want to be in the play-in. So it's like a disappointment for all of them in that sense. But hopefully, for the sake of the Chicago Bulls, everyone just keeps losing because then they'll just be stuck with the 10 seed and get in. But I mean, we're gonna move on to something that I feel like not too many people are like discussing. and that's the JJ Redick trade. Originally, he's called out the Pelicans front office for being, dishonest with him, and they said that they were going to trade him to a Northeast team, by his family, which I think most people were thinking of mainly the Brooklyn Nets. And of course, he got traded to the Dallas Mavericks, and they made that promise to him. But I think the big thing to look at for this is a guy like Lonzo Ball, who was in trade rumors, and maybe guys like Zion or Brandon Ingram, or these guys, Josh Hart, that are younger, that are probably expected to be there for a long time. What do you think about? What do you think this makes them look at the front office like?
Probably not good. We heard Redick say, or Tommy Alter, the co-host of the podcast that JJ Redick has, his final question to JJ was, why should any player trust the New Orleans Pelicans front office? And JJ said, they shouldn't. And I think that speaks volume about that front office. You're dealing with a 15-year NBA veteran in JJ Redick, somebody who's well-respected around the league, somebody that just wants to be close to his family, especially during times like this where he doesn't want all he said is, I wanted to be somewhere where when I had a day off, I could drive home. That's anywhere in the Northeast. If it's a 2-hour drive, it's a 2-hour drive, but he didn't want to be a 3-hour plane ride away as he was in New Orleans. And so, as a little background, the deal made by him and David Griffin was David Griffin said, come down for the first month, and if you still are not happy with it here, I will trade you. And so JJ Redick said, okay. He was a man of his word. He went there for a month. Nothing happened, and nothing happened, and nothing happened. And then finally he got the news that he was traded to the Mavericks. And what he said is, the Mavericks weren't a team on my list. And he said, it's no disrespect, it's no shade towards Dallas, because in any other year, I'd be pleased to go to Dallas. I'd love to go to Dallas. But given the circumstances, that isn't somewhere I wanted to go. And so, especially if you're a young player and you're saying, if a veteran can't get the kind of treatment he deserves, what makes me think me on a rookie contract is going to get that? Or what makes me think somebody who hasn't proven a whole lot is going to get that? So it's a terrible look. It's a terrible look for David Griffin in the front office. But JJ Redick used his platform and used his platform to come out and speak out on behalf of the players. But if I'm David Griffin in the New Orleans Pelicans, that is just a terrible look.
Yeah, and I mean, you could even say the same thing if I know Lonzo came out and he said, I want to be here. He could just also be doing that, to make the media shut up a little bit. But if he were to say something like, I want to go back home as well, maybe not like the Lakers, because they have kind of a complete they really have like a point guard in LeBron and also now Schroeder. So it's like, maybe I want to go to the Clippers and still play in LA. And then it's like they make that promise and then they send him somewhere like the Timberwolves or something, like somewhere just random. So then it like would look just as bad, and I think more people will be talking about it too because it's Lonzo as opposed to JJ Redick. But then you can also like look back at like why Anthony Davis wanted out. Maybe did he know something about this as well that many people haven't really been looking at yet. So I don't know. It's a lot to take in.
Yeah, it's a lot, and as we've discussed before, small market teams need to do everything right. Like, you don't have the luxury of screwing up. You screw up on draft picks, and your star player that you already have isn't going to want to stay. Like, loyalty has become a harder thing to come by in the league. But we'll just use the Anthony Davis situation, for example. And they built a good team around Anthony Davis. He had Rondo, and he had DeMarcus Cousins, and he had Drew Holiday. But they never got to that pinnacle of success that he really wanted. So if you can't surround your star player with suitable role players or even other stars in order to win, then they're going to just simply want out. And so I look at situations like Memphis is probably a glaring one right now. It's John Morant, right? He's going to be that guy. But if Memphis strikes out on their 2 next draft picks, and before you know it, Ja's rookie contract is up, and he says, you guys haven't done anything for me, you're not going to get a lot of players that are most likely going to say, hey, I want to go play in Memphis. You're going to get players that say, I want to go play in New York, or I want to go play in Chicago or LA. So these small market teams have to do things right. When you have a GM like that, somebody like David Griffin, who has been noted to just now by JJ Redick not be a man of his word, terrible look for the franchise, and I think it hurts him in the long run.
Yeah, and I mean he's been kind of controversial over the years with his own emotions. Like we could even go back to like when LeBron originally left for Miami, like for David Griffin. But I mean, I don't know. It just shows that it's a business first for some of these front offices. But
Yeah, nothing more to be said.
yeah, um, we're gonna talk a little bit about the top two teams in the Western Conference, the Utah Jazz and the Phoenix Suns. You know, the Jazz, they've won 7 straight. This is actually the third time this year they've had a streak that high or more. And then also the Suns, they've won 4 straight. They're both 8-2 in their last 10. And, you know, as we get closer to the end of the season, you know, there's still questions with some of these other teams, new faces and with like injuries. Are you starting to become bought into either of these teams?
I'm going to consider them contenders now, but I'm not going to consider either of them the favorite. Earlier on, I wasn't bought in. I'll be completely honest. But now, I think given the circumstances around the league, I have to be bought in. If the Lakers are healthy, I still think the Lakers are the favorite to come out of the West. But we don't know the extent of LeBron and AD. We don't know what they're going to look like when they come back. The Clippers are the Clippers. Between health issues, we just haven't seen them put it together. The Nuggets got a lot better with Aaron Gordon, but I'm not sure that I can necessarily consider them the favorite either. The Suns and the Jazz have been the most consistent all year, but they've also avoided the injury bug for the most part. Chris Paul's provided a bunch of stability, a bunch of leadership, and he has the Suns playing their best basketball in a very, very long time. Donovan Mitchell and the Jazz are very spread out. They're very evenly distributed. The team is clicking on all cylinders. The connection is there. The chemistry is there. They're probably the team that has the most chemistry in the league, just given how long they've played together. So I think they're certainly up there as well. Well, like I said, I mean, I have the Lakers and I have the Nets ahead of either the Suns or the Jazz at the very least. And then I probably throw teams like the Bucks and the Sixers and the Clippers and the Nuggets and the Jazz and the Suns in like that next tier.
Yeah, I think when they both were at like the top originally, you know, a few weeks ago, I was thinking maybe these are just going to be teams in the regular season that are great, and then you know they're just going to get probably exposed by some of the top teams like the Lakers or the Clippers or something like that. But I think like now I'm at least bought into the point where it's like I wouldn't be surprised if they pulled off that series upset. I wouldn't favor them over those teams, but I wouldn't be surprised. You know, the sixth man of the year in Jordan Clarkson, and they have already a rotation set for the playoffs of about 8 or 9 guys, 3 All-Stars, which is the only team in the Western Conference with that as well. And then as for the Phoenix Suns, I mean, they've kind of reinvented their culture this season. I know a lot of people look at Chris Paul, but you could also look at, like, you know, their front office, because some of the moves that they made, I mean, they brought in guys like Etuan Moore and Langston Galloway, like, off the bench, got Torrey Craig in a trade. So they got, like, shooters around there, Jay Crowder. But I think it's also the moves that they didn't make and the moves that they, like, the people they let go. Like, Mikal Bridges has an argument for, like, most improved player this year. You know, getting Frank Kaminsky back was pretty big. But then, like, look at the guys they let go. Like, they let go of Ricky Rubio. Nobody's been talking about Ricky Rubio at all this year. Kelly Oubre, who's been struggling most of the season. Aaron Baines, who Toronto Raptors fans have pretty much bashed him all year long. So it's like, it was such a, like, I don't think I've ever seen a situation where so many players, like, got let go by a team, and it's like all those players have been playing bad, whereas every single person that they brought in has been playing so well. So I think that's kind of something that makes it scary for the Suns, because it's like, this is way unexpected from what we thought going in.
Yeah, I like to call that the Chris Paul effect. The outside of LeBron, he's probably the next player that just elevates teams so much. And I'm not going to say he's the next best player in the league, but in terms of leadership, in terms of what he does for a team, I think Chris Paul is number 2 on that list.
Yeah, and I think some would even argue, like, MVP is kind of narrative driven, but you could even argue he was truly the most valuable player with OKC last year. And I mean, he's showing his value once again this year. Um, so
Yeah, I think I would say he's 100% the most important player on that Thunder team last year.
yeah, I agree with that. And we're gonna move on to the daily picks to close it out. Starting with April 2nd, we got the Warriors and Raptors, a finals rematch from 2 years ago, but now it's looking like hopefully these teams can even get in the playoffs. But who do you got here?
Yeah, finals matchup to lottery matchup. I'm going to go with the Golden State Warriors.
I'm also going to go with the Warriors. The Raptors have just been so bad lately, and the Warriors just got Curry back, so I'm taking them in this one. On the third, we got the Magic and the Jazz. Who you got here?
I'm going to go with Utah. Not too much to be said.
Yep, Utah. Simple as that. On the fourth, we got the Hornets and Celtics. Gordon Hayward going back to Boston. Who do you got here?
Yeah, we got the revenge narrative for both Gordon Hayward and Terry Rozier. And the likewise Kemba Walker narrative. So big narrative game. I think Boston figures some stuff out and wins this one.
Yeah, I forgot about Terry's homecoming thing as well, but I'm actually gonna go with the Hornets. I think that they're gonna try and make a statement, specifically those two, Rozier and Gordon Hayward. But on the fifth, we got the Knicks and the Nets battle in New York. Who takes it?
Yeah, I'm going to go with Brooklyn, even if both James Harden and Kevin Durant are out. I expect KD to be out. Harden looks like he might be out for that matchup, but I'm still going to lean with the Nets.
I'm gonna I'll take the Nets as well. I was thinking about it. I don't know. It could be one of those either ors, but I'm gonna go with the Nets on this one. On the sixth, we got the 9 and 10 matchup in the Eastern Conference right now. The Bulls at Indiana against the Pacers. Who's taking this?
Yeah, I like Indiana in this matchup.
Yeah, I'm gonna go with the Pacers as well. On the seventh, we got the Hornets and the Thunder. What you got here?
I like the Thunder. Not a very good basketball team, but somehow playing a lot better than they should be. And I think the Thunder win this one.
I can never go against the Game 6 Hornets. They've got to be like the team that we've had the most on like the sixth day of the week. But I'm going with the Hornets yet again. And then on the last day, probably the best game of the week, we got the Suns and Clippers. Who are you taking here?
I like Phoenix because I already know there's going to be somebody on the Clippers that's unexpected to not play, that will not end up not playing due to injury or something like that. So I like Phoenix.
I don't know if I regret this, but I'm gonna go with the Clippers. I think the Suns are favorited to win this, but I don't know. I'm gonna go. I have a feeling the Clippers are just gonna win. Could be a second round matchup too, so should be interesting to see this with about a month going into before playoff time.
Absolutely.
But that's gonna close out the show. I hope you guys enjoyed. Any final thoughts?
Nothing big. Enjoy March Madness, the final 2 days of it. Saturday, Gonzaga Bulldogs versus the UCLA Bruins, and also Battle of Texas, Baylor versus Houston. Could see Gonzaga go 32-0 and make the case to be one of the greatest college teams of all time. And then Monday night, we get to see the finals. So enjoy that, and we will be back next Thursday.
Yeah, and I feel pretty good about Gonzaga's chances, but who knows? Anything could happen in a one-game situation. That's what makes March Madness March Madness. But yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed. Thank you guys for watching, and we're out. Peace.